data, cloud, artificial intelligence, right? Machine learning. We see the everything, right? Pretty much the everything is transforming around us, right? So if I take the example of the cutting edge technology like Tesla is it's I wouldn't call it even the car. It's a data center on wheels, right? Because the amount of data it collects every seconds and the way it processes and take the decisions, right? I don't think so anybody would have imagined it. You know, we would have talked about it 10, 15 years before that we're going to have a car which will be able to self-drive itself and we can just, hop on it and we don't have to worry about stopping at sign or, kind of navigating it. Nobody would have believed it, right? But I commute every day in a Bay Area and you guys won't believe, but I've seen people, kind of literally sleeping in a Tesla car. That literally like in the first day morning I've seen people do it sleeping in. So this all has been possible is because of the technological innovation is happening, right? AWS, Google, Microsoft, guys are probably aware of it, the way the speed they are kind of innovating it. And also some of the new services, right? So for instance, Uber, Lyft, then Yelp, Airbnb, right? TikTok, all these new kind of businesses has came into the picture is only because of we have underlying tools and technology available, right? Without smartphone, there's no Uber, there's no Airbnb, right? Without the application. So what we are seeing is that in this fourth digital revolution, it's become very important for individual and also the organization to kind of recognize, right, that the power of the tools and technology, and then come up with the strategy and the solution to kind of take the advantage of it. How we can take the advantage of it, not with the individual benefit, but also the benefit of the organization. So this was a pretty much high level about the four phases of the industrial revolution. Now, let's talk about digital transformation, right? So as such, there is no specific definition of the digital transformation, but fundamentally, the way I kind of understand is that leveraging the technology to fundamentally transform the business processes, data, application to increase the profit, right, productivity, and enhance the overall user experience. So if we look at it, that when we all the technology which I just talked about, if we start using and take the advantage of it, right, what we are doing is we are fundamentally transforming how the business used to be conducted, right? How and then enabling the new processes, taking the advantage of the data, right, and making more sense of it, and what the data kind of tells the story. And in addition to that, we are also customizing and enhancing the overall user experience. Nowadays, as you guys interact most of the time when you go to the Facebook, LinkedIn, Netflix, Yelp, Amazon, all these good kind of good stuff and the services. One thing is pretty common is they all offer the individual experience, right? It's not like that when you log into the Amazon, it shows the product which someone else has bought it. Okay, so everything has been individualized and personalized. So that's what the expectation and the experience users are having outside the organization. And one of the gap which I've seen is and identified that when the same these folks, right, the millennials especially, when they join the organization, they tend to kind of expect the same experience from the organization as well, right? And that's why we have seen the birth of Slack, the birth of the Microsoft Teams. Why? Because these are the instant messaging platforms, which kind of it kind of the concept is came from still the consumer application, but at the enterprise level, right? So if you guys have used the Slack or Microsoft Teams, then you will notice that they are no longer traditional platform like a Slack or Jabber, right? It allows you to express yourself in so many different ways with the emoji, with the GIF, with some sort of short video. You do the polling. So it's like a more like a fun environment to working it. And it's become very important for organization to kind of understand, right, what these tools and technologies consumers are using on daily basis, so that when these same folks join their workforce, so provide them a same consistent experience. So why do organizations require the digital transformation now? the So this question is pretty big, and the answer lies in two: to understand the core components of the any organization, right? Any organization is consists of people, process, product, data, and technology. Now, once you have the right combination and the balance of these core components, you are able to transform much more faster than any other organization, right? Whatever your goal is, your objective is, you will be able to meet them if you identify that which components, right, needs to be worked on or needs to be improved to have the to achieve your goal, right? And start with the people. Now it doesn't matter, it any kind of good technology available out in the market, but if in your organization, if you don't have the folks who understand the technology, those who have rights, who don't have the skill set, right, they cannot take the advantage of the technology available out there. Once we have the technology, might have seen in your career that the larger organization with so much of bureaucracy, right? And that's a kind of another bottleneck for innovation. That's why it's become very important to kind of review and understand and improve the overall processes so that the decisions can be made very faster, and like the organization don't lose much of their time. In terms of the product also, then what kind of technical technological products and the services organizations are using it, that also play a very important role, because eventually these products and services enables you to kind of achieve your goal. Now once you have a right people with the skill set, processes also works fine, and then you have right services, and you start kind of implementing it and kind of taking advantage of it, then it's become very important to also gather the data, because data will be able to tell you a lot more inside the story, than what people, product, and services able to tell you, right? So for instance, if we take the example of the Netflix, now the interesting algorithm about the Netflix is that they profile each user with the so many data point that they will be able to tell that at what time which user watches what kind of shows, what genre they watch, right? And then based on all this connective data point, they will be accurately able to predict, right? That what this user might like to see it. So that's a power of a data. Same thing happened with the Google as well, right? When you start typing, and it's able to recognize that what exactly you are trying to search, and based on the so many data points, based on your browser history, able to predict. Okay, so now the whole transformation, that there's a big shift from a corrective to preventive thing, right? And it's all possible because of the data. Then become it's another key component is the technology. So once we decide that yes, we are going to transform it, certain business processes, but if you don't deploy the right technology, then you might not be able to achieve your goal, right? So for instance, just think about if the customer, there is some organization, kind of in an e-commerce space, where they are providing all the services, right? But if they have not integrated the online payment system, they won't be able to, nobody's going to use that kind of services, right? So it's become very important that you deploy and exploit the right kind of technology, whatever the kind of suit best to your environment or your business goals or the services which you are going to offer. Okay. Then I think it's a very important that we ask the key questions about that. How do we start, right? I mean, how we go about doing all the business and the digital transformation. So what I've done is I have identified the four key questions, which kind of gives you the starting point about this journey. So we got asked that what do we have? It's so much important to have an understanding about our existing environment, right? And then and then starting all from there. Then it's the second most question would be that to what do you want to do, right? What is the vision, what is your goal, what are you trying to achieve, right? Are we trying to improve the process, are we trying to reduce the production cost, are we trying to kind of limit the number of application or centralized application, what exactly we are trying to do? Once you define it, then it becomes a lot more easier to come up with a roadmap on that how we will get there, right? And once you start the journey, then it's very important that you keep measuring the progress, right? Are you making the progress in the right direction or not, right? And based on your learning, based on how you're progressing, it's important that you kind of tailor your route uh, uh, to achieve your long-term goal. So then I started as a it's also important to understand that digital transformation is not a destination. So especially the leadership team, they have to come up with a kind of ongoing project or program where you are continuously transforming one process or one business function area to another one, because it's a journey, right? It's not like a destination that once you transform one particular business processes or the business unit, then you are kind of done. No, that's not how it's going to work. So for instance, if we take the example of the Amazon, right? It started with just an online bookseller, and then today we see how they were able to transform themselves. Today they have like more than 43% market share in cloud services, right? And on top of that, if I look at it, the industry after industry, they are transforming, right? They are into the media business, they are into the kind of services, cloud services, then e-commerce, and also getting into kind of a retail, right, with the acquisition of Whole Food, then security also with the acquisition of the Ring. So you see how the one organization is able to grow from just a book selling, right, online website to becoming a $1 trillion industry. Okay, so Amazon is like one of the remarkable uh, organization I've seen that transform with so rapidly. Uh, it's really amazed me. So once you have figured it out that key components of the digital transformation, that's very important to kind of understand the organization environment, and how each component in the organization is going to play a significant role. So you start with the social, right? You ask yourself that how the organization is functioning, right? How the people are working, what kind of a skill set they have, what kind of knowledge is required, and then you start from there. Slowly you progress, and then you bring the technology and the function people all together, and ultimately the core of the transformation, right? I would say the fundamental building block of the digital transformation is all about the organizational culture, because despite having the right amount of data, processes, product, technology, if you don't have that growth mindset, right, if the culture is not there, then it's become very challenging to transform it. Because based on my studies, what I've seen is that the single most reason for failure of any kind of transformation project is the organizational culture. So that's why it become very important to kind of get the people on board, right? And also communicate such a way so that entire everybody in the organization, they are on the same page, they understand what exactly we are all trying to achieve. Okay, then I have identified the four domain of the digital transformation. So when you start this journey, you gotta look at these four domains, that how we are performing on these domains, which is like a technology, data, innovation, and then value. Okay, now we're gonna look at some of these domains into the very detail. So let's look at the technology. Now, today we have very high tech technology available, like a public cloud, machine learning, bots, robots, 5G, artificial intelligence, and whatnot. So the really key question is that in order in order to bring a fundamental change into the organization, right? How can we leverage this technology? Okay, so it's very important that you guys know that these technologies available, right? What are the benefits of this technology, and what are the some of the limitations are. So I'm gonna stop here and ask you guys to share some of your success stories or what you have seen, how organization has or kind of some of the business unit have transformed themselves by leveraging certain technology. So I would be happy to if you guys share some of the examples. It doesn't have to be kind of big transformational change. Even the smallest amount of change which you have seen that organization is able to kind of manage to make it with the existing technology. So it will be a good learning for me as well to kind of know how, based on your experience, what you guys have seen it. So
Well, awkward silence. I'll throw something out. Uh, so we have a customer who is kind of a small to mid-sized business, I guess, who is very legacy application, driven, and weren't really looking to do much of modernization of any kind, including going to the cloud. So we, almost crashed them off the list as a potential customer, so to speak. But then we saw some potential with putting robotic process automation for them in. That works really well with all the legacy technologies that they have, right? I mean, it's not that, I mean, it has a nice buzzword to it, but it's not really that, shiny of an object when it's not, kind of paired with, sort of more sexy technologies like cloud, like artificial intelligence, maybe. But it worked for them, and like much of their finance and accounting derived a lot of benefit out of it, automating just very simple processes that they do in a back office environment, processing of invoices, purchase orders, and all that stuff that they would previously do manually and spend a lot of time on, and kind of introduce human error to it. Became actually quite good in terms of the quality of the process, and they do it now in a fraction of time. So,
just
one small example.
yeah, no, that's very interesting. So I do you know the background, like how they start all about, or they realize that this is the time now, it's enough is enough, we have to change it, we required some sort of transformation of this particular processes. Like, what was the driver behind it? Was it like a management push, uh, or the technology was at the age of sunset? What was the driving factor behind it?
I think the main driving factor was, during sort of the time of COVID, surprisingly, the type of business they do, I mean, did not go down in volume. I mean, they do like, a lot of, remote, shipping and fulfillment of orders. So it actually skyrocketed for them, and they couldn't, keep up with the business with the back office they had. And they didn't really, since they, went to like work from home environment, they didn't really want to expand the back office and hire new people because they didn't know how to onboard them, how to incorporate them into their kind of process and in the environment. So they were looking for a solution that could sort of easily help them with automating some of their back office processes and shrinking the time that they use for on those processes without much interruption.
I
So
see.
that like legacy like technology that basically would automate like almost visually, right? I mean, like with RPA, it's almost like a macro of some sort, right? You see windows opening, you see things being copied and pasted into from one window into another. So it's all of the things that their people were doing, only it's being done in an automated fashion now and can be done much faster.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. So it's very, 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 kind of. Thanks for sharing, of Andrew. But I've seen that that's why it's become very important that when any organization like lay out the fundamental plan for transformation, they have the very solid foundation, so that during this time, when kind of a growth has become very exponential, and it could be anything, right? It could be a merger acquisition, it could be exponential growth in the business, or it could be this like a pandemic, right? Nobody knew. in any these kind of circumstances, you have very solid foundation on which you can kind of build it, right? So that's very important to have a very solid and robust foundation. Um, Anyone else would like to share it? The the story they have witnessed about that organization going through some of the fundamental transformation. Frank, you still with us? Uh,
Satish.
my
Hey, Satish.
yes,
This is Frank. Sorry, whenever I see anything to do with AI, machine learning, bots, I think of like Dynamics and Power Platform. I run away.
Frank's more in the Microsoft security realm now. But Frank, you said run away from AI and Dynamics. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Why is that? Cost?
No, Dynamics.
Uh-huh.
Been doing it for 17 years. So if you've been around for as long as I've had with Dynamics and their business applications, then you understand why someone like me would be running away.
But Frank, it seems almost like Dynamics 365 is almost like in a second life, writing a new chapter almost. Is it a second chapter? Is it a fresh life? Is it totally different than before? How do you compare the old Dynamics, which was not as sexy and did not get as much publicity, to the new Dynamics? Is the new Dynamics, namely 365 on the cloud, is that going to take over the world?
No. So here's the deal. Everything that we're talking about here when it comes to Dynamics and the Power Platform is actually, from the technology side, very awesome, okay? I have no problems with the technology whatsoever. What I have a problem with is the marketing and the constant change in pricing, which then customers have no clue what to do. They can't budget for Dynamics and the Power Platform because they don't know what the pricing will be 6 months from now. And so you take a look at the fact now they've changed CDS now to be called, remember they went to DataFlex and were sued immediately because they didn't realize they were taking a trademark name. Now they've changed it to Dataverse, which everybody hates that name too. So, basically they have great technology, great roadmap for the technology, but they're just with pricing, trying to change over to consumption-based pricing. And then also just from their marketing messages, they're just confusing the market. So that's why ISVs will run away from this because of what they're doing in the ISV market. So I just don't know what Microsoft's doing with it. I think that SMBs will definitely run away. So it's left to the enterprise and government. I think they'll do just fine in government. From there, but that's really the biggest problem. You have to look at the product all up of the fact that, hey, this, I can budget for, this is going to cost me this much for 1 gigabyte of storage, but who knows, in 4 months from now, it could be 5 times as much. And that's a problem for customers.
Yeah, I hear you, Frank. And as a follow-up to RPA, I actually use RPA to do sales and marketing, to get sales lead. And a lot of the RPA vendors are very consumption-based. I'm looking for an all-you-can-eat buffet. If I got a robot, I want that robot to work so hard that, it's blowing steam, right? Blowing smoke. But a lot of these RPA vendors are charging, by the transaction. The stuff adds up, and, I'm trying to compare vendors, and then, they all turn out to be almost like, in on the same game, trying to bilk you from a consumption standpoint.
So how much do bots cost you with inside Dynamics right now? That's the sort of thing. And the problem is, what is it now, but what will it be in 6 months from now? You just don't know. So, as Microsoft, right now, a lot of, I think, organizations are saying, I want to implement technology that will end up making it so Amazon, AWS, Microsoft, and GCP, compete for my business versus being vendor locked in, and then they can do whatever they want with us. I'm just seeing more and more of that. So, there's just simply under Dynamics right now, a lot of this stuff, there's too much risk in doing business with Microsoft. I told you the story a few years ago where basically I was doing the portals, the dynamic portals, and I had to go to my customer who could not allow emails to be sent out. They actually had to have people log in, the customers, quote unquote, to log in on a daily basis to check what has changed. And I had to go back to them and say, okay, I'm changing my quote from $500 a month to $400,000 a month for that solution. Fortunately, Microsoft, before they finalized the portals pricing, that got changed down to $200,000 a month. But this government agency actually was able to get the old pricing. So who knows in X number of years when they have to use the system again, because it had to do with the elections, what the pricing is going to be. But that sort of thing where you don't, when you have to go to a customer and say, hey, I have to change my quote from $500 a month to $400,000 a month. How, as a system integrator or a solution provider, can you trust the pricing from Microsoft? I mean, that's all there is to it. I mean, I don't know what planet runs into, but that's the sort of thing that you have to be careful about this. And so you have to look at what technology it can be used across the different clouds.
Yeah, that's kind of like bait and switch. Andrew, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was about to say, Mike, Frank brings like a very interesting point. I agree with him, completely. And it's almost an unusual case. Usually Microsoft starts with like a technology that is kind of like MVP that nobody really likes, that's barely works, and then they work themselves out of it, and ultimately it becomes a useful product. I think with Dynamics, well, number one, I mean, many years have passed. It's a pretty mature, technology, and the technology is surprisingly good. It's possibly, best out of, all the, major competitors. But the marketing, the consistent kind of, I guess, mismanagement of some of the products, the rebranding of them, and the confusion associated with, how much does it cost? I mean, I think it's just not particularly healthy, not for Microsoft, nor for customers. But I, kind of in their defense, I guess I find it that it's an interesting predicament because they sort of existed in that particular vertical in that particular market segment for a while. So Dynamics been around. So now they need to transition this almost like a conglomerate of legacy technologies that they acquired from multiple companies and, finally kind of morphed to look and act like Microsoft product. So they need to transform it into this, digital, I guess, cloud age. So they need to figure out how to do the, pay-per-use thing, consumption-based model. But at the same time, they don't really want to lose any revenue that was associated with a legacy, license-based, for example, or per seat per user-based model. And it's pretty tricky. So you can't really lose any revenue here, and yet you need to figure out how to transition to the new business model. So it's pretty painful. I think it's painful for both Microsoft and customers alike. And I also find it interesting that me personally, and I think a lot of people were super excited when, like cloud became, very popular with this promise of, it's like an electrical utility. You pay for what you use. But very quickly, especially for government organizations, but not only, it became, completely the opposite. It's like, well, yeah, maybe, but we need to know ahead of time how much it's going to cost us. It's great that we only pay for what we use, but we want to know what we're going to be using 5 years from now. and it's impossible to determine.
And the other thing is I'm really against organizations if they just simply do a lift and shift scenario. Forget about, let's talk before COVID, right? When they were looking at just doing a lift and shift situation, their bills were going to be through the roof. So a lot of them just don't strategically understand how to utilize everything in Azure on a consumption basis that gets the most value for them. Okay. You know, oh, look, we have a web server. Let's just throw up, you know, this virtual machine. We'll lift and shift this machine into the cloud as a virtual machine that's running all these web services, right? You know, instead of saying, hey, how can we actually utilize different Azure services out there to decrease our costs and give us greater capability? And so that's the other thing, I mean, that drives me crazy about watching enterprise organizations try to move to the cloud and understand the pricing. So I think that overall that, you know, going to a consumption-based pricing is great. And there's a lot of areas where you can take advantage of that and it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of, and I have to say that most of it from the Azure technologies, it's more on the customer not understanding how to take advantage of it. Where on the Dynamics side, it's more of Dynamics not being able to, Microsoft Dynamics being able to come up with realistic pricing, number one, and then number two, communicating that properly.
I see. That's a great point, Frank and Andrew, for sharing it. I don't work on a Microsoft Dynamics 365. For Office 365 and M365, it's pretty straightforward, but I do agree with your point is I've seen many organizations Azure, once they are completely migrated to Azure, the biggest challenge has become managing their cost. So there are third-party products like a ShareGate, you know, kind of, and I believe Microsoft also has a cloud in, they acquired this organization, which kind of help you and to simplify and bring all the resources and their costing into just a centralized dashboard. So not sure if you ever get a chance to look into it, but
I know all about the costing with inside Azure, but you have to take it's a step further back from that. It's not about putting the controls in place for your cost with inside Azure. It's going when you're migrating. You can't do a lift and shift and expect you to quote unquote pay less going to the cloud and taking advantage of the cloud. That just, you could actually do a lift and shift and say, okay, I'm paying more right now, that's fine, but I have to re-architect what I'm lifting and shifting to take advantage of, you know, serverless computing
exactly.
available to me. And so what organizations are not doing or not taking advantage of serverless computing and taking advantage of the cost savings there. So that's more than just controlling the cost and knowing what you're spending it on. It's actually the beginning of the process. They need to look at going serverless.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that those required some sort of a deep dive into the architecture, right? How the existing application has been put together, and then once we go to the cloud, it's completely different ballgame, right? So if you gotta know that if the storage is cheaper, then you gotta change your application to take the advantage of all those services, right? Serverless like a Lambda, and then your Microsoft functions. If for AWS it's a Lambda, and for Azure it's a Microsoft function. So those are the great points. Yep. Thank you guys for sharing it.
Hey guys, I like to make a comment.
Sure.
Yes, that in and of itself is true. And when I look at the pricing models for that, there's an organization I know that uses Dynamics that I was working for. The pricing models for Azure, like, yes, as you say, you're only paying like your gas electric. You pay for what you use. But there are some organizations who have to be on, and when I mean on, I mean servers have to be running 24/7. So that model is what I don't understand about Microsoft, because to me it's kind of counterproductive. That's, you're asking people to put out a lot of money on a continuous basis, whereas they could host their own. But then the security aspect to it is, okay, we're using Microsoft Dynamics and we're running our business and we're running our organizations and we're doing a lot with it. Yes, that you don't have to run 24/7. You can even have that on and off for a couple hours a day. But for the server, from your server aspect of it, that gets a little pricey. So I can understand why Microsoft is charging as much from a business perspective. But again, it's kind of counterproductive to me that they would go that high for a product that's really useful.
So this is Frank. First of all, you have to understand that you're paying more to Microsoft for that excellent tier 1 support. Ha ha ha. Okay, no jokes out there. Nobody laughing about the tier 1. Okay. So one of the things that I point out to people when they look at what they're getting is the fact that, when you're paying for storage, you're saying, okay, I can just go out to the store and buy my external hard drive and I'm good to go. But when you look at what Microsoft's providing you from uptime, redundancy, multiple data centers, and then your cost not only for that hardware, software, also the people to keep that running, I have to say that when you're in that level, that requirement, I think that you're getting a pretty good value, even though it looks like you're paying more. You have to look at your all up cost. So if they're in that situation, but I think that a lot of people don't understand that you actually have to put employee cost. You have to look. I mean, everything. Just electricity, everything involved with that. And I think that they'll find that they actually are getting a pretty good deal. I think better security than what they're going to have internally, and great support.
And that's true, but it costs us jobs, so I'm not happy about that.
What I see is that more organizations. So let me talk pre-COVID. Okay, I don't know how COVID's changed this, right? Because I've been stuck in my basement for 10 months or whatever. The the biggest challenge that they've had is they have so much technical debt, and how to move that forward and get through their own internal meetings to actually get things move forward. So, I mean, I think that if I was going to start my career over, I would look at how to migrate an organization to serverless computing and take advantage of that, because that's, I see the biggest need for enterprise organizations out there right now, to get someone in that can understand how to do that. Give you an example that I ran into was they're like, hey, we have the best SQL Server person, there's SQL Server MVP and all this stuff. I'm like, well, I sure hope that person knows how to connect buttons and wires between the different Microsoft services out there, the products that are out there in Azure, because that's really what they're doing. This person that can tune your SQL Server to no end on-prem, I'm not really interested in their services, right? So you have to rethink your staffing and how you're going to move those products forward. But if I was going to go into Azure Consulting today and try to sell my service to the enterprise, it would be all around migrating on-premise legacy and how to take advantage of serverless computing, because you will pay for yourself 5-10 times over to that organization. And I just don't see that expertise out there looking at it like that way. Maybe Planet's providing that. Like I said, I've been out of the game for a while, but that's the biggest holdup. A friend of mine said, hey, I'm going to work for Microsoft. What do you think about selling Azure? I'm like, you could sell Azure all day long. Now, selling the actual consumption, that's the challenge. It's not that organizations don't want to do it. They just can't get there because of all the technical debt.
And you know what, Frank? That's absolutely, like, 5 years ago, I got certified. And I'm not bragging, guys. I'm just saying this as to make this point. When I first stood up my 365 subscription, purchased my 365 subscription, was studying for my certs, I was certified to sell Office 365 to small businesses. Then when I tried to do it, it became, well, we don't really need all of that. I actually stood up a 2-server SharePoint farm for this one company, and I was like, are you kidding me? When I walked in, they had everything on one server. And I was telling them, look, you have to kind of open this up, because they were expanding. And that's when I tried to sell them Office 365, and it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. So yes, there's that. you're right. It makes sense for a larger company, especially if it's a company has multiple offices across the country, because they don't have to stand up all of these server rooms and pay for the support. Yes, they're going to pay for some support because Microsoft doesn't do everything, but at the same time, um, it allows you to decrease their. It allows you to allows them to decrease their footprint. So, yeah.
So here's my thing is that I've been consulting since 92, okay? And I've been through a lot of different economies or whatever. I can tell you right now, I don't believe that Microsoft really cares about small and medium-sized businesses, right?
Nope. Not at all.
Not one bit. So if you're getting into this game, looking at this stuff, and you say, hey, I want to consult to small to medium-sized businesses, it's not going to be good for the next 2, 3, 4 years. You know, that's the thing. So you've got to look at selling to the enterprise and consulting to the enterprise, and what are their needs today. You know, I don't even, small to medium-sized businesses, just I don't even, I jettisoned all of those. I jettisoned all of them actually before COVID because of Microsoft. I was a small Microsoft partner, and Microsoft doesn't even want small Microsoft partners. They only care about you know, partners that can move the numbers like Planet, right? So when you look at that, you have to say, you know, all right, how am I going to make money in this economy on web technology? And to me, the enterprise moving forward at Azure, you know, serverless is, you know, where somebody that focuses in on that area can actually sell themselves over them being just an Azure administrator.
Yeah, and you know, to your point, Frank, you mentioned that it may seem daunting to train all these on-prem people. But the way I kind of look at it is, instead of trying to learn it all overnight, because you know, you almost have to push that transformational button, flip that switch, and it cannot. It's tough for it to be a gradual process because, you know, you do a migration of 365. It's not a, you know, it's almost like an all or nothing deal. You know, you could do a hybrid scenario, but then, you know, it defeats the cost purpose and the benefits purpose as well. I think that's where you kind of need to partner up with companies like Planet, you know, companies who have had experience, companies who have had, you know, the technical expertise as well as the strategy, as well as the architectural, because the money that you could spend on making a mistake on usage, on architecture, on migration, it can be deadly.
Yeah, but not as deadly as what it used to be. I mean, before, the cost of doing that sort of thing was, you know, let's go out, buy a bunch of hardware, spin up all these SQL servers, get all the licenses, all that other fun stuff, and see what happens, and dealing with, you know, finding the risks and making the move and all that other fun stuff. Now you spin up, you press a few buttons, and if you mess up, you delete the resource group and you're on your way. I mean, there's a lot less risk in that area than what we used to think of from an on-prem standpoint. So organizations need to, you know, I know one organization where, you know, I pushed their internal team to go get Azure training, and they did. They went and got certified, and then this company said, okay, well, we're not ready to move yet. Well, guess what? They lost their staff. Those people moved on so they could actually be doing more Azure related stuff out there. So, you know, there's a lot of teaching the internal staff because they have a better knowledge of your applications. But to think that, hey, I've got this person that can optimize SQL Server, that's going to be an incredible value to you going over to Azure, it's not going to really be the case, because that's what, one of the reasons why you're going into Azure SQL is to let them take care of that sort of stuff for you. So,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean,
just
so many companies just drag their feet on the cloud because we got to get everybody trained. You know, we got a lot of on-prem people that that we got to take care of. And I'm not saying we don't take care of the on-prem people. I mean, Michael Tyson here is an on-prem guy. I think we need to boost those guys up to a higher level to be.
That's why I tell organizations, they brought me in. I'm like, oh, so you expect me to know in a week the 50 different systems that integrate together and how to design that to move to the cloud and every single detail of that? No, that's not going to happen. What we do is we educate your people internally here that know these systems inside and out, and then I work with them to come up with a strategy to get it to the cloud. I'm more of a facilitator than anything else in those situations, because those people that have been at that company for 10 years that know those 50 systems, they're going to know a hell of a lot more than me. That's all there is to it. So I need to get them trained, facilitate the entire process to get them to take advantage of what's in the cloud.
I think the facilitator word is the magic word. I mean, you got to get people who are experienced in there, and then kind of step back. Almost do an RFP, step back and facilitate the process. And the facilitation not only is facilitating getting the vendors in to do it, but it's also facilitating, people like Mike Tyson to move up that food chain and to get them training. But, to try to, drag people across the finish line, let's all get trained up first, and all this stuff. It could take years, and
I gotta say, Microsoft was doing so much. If you take a look at the Reston Technology Center, in design sessions for enterprise customers, and also going in for a day-long worth of training that they used to provide, but they're doing it in the cloud now. You could just go sit at Microsoft for a day or two, and you would actually have an incredible amount of knowledge to move forward.
Yes,
so
Perla has brought me to many meetings over there in Reston.
So, I mean, and I think that you're going to see the quality of the Microsoft.com/learn content really increase from what I call functional drive-by content to deeper content, over the next year. I really see that happening because, of course, I'm working on it. But I think that there's going to be a lot of free training out there to get people up to speed, and actually deeper content instead of drive-by functionality.
Yep, and I think this is actually kind of interesting point, because I mean, one message would be maybe, for Mike, that I guess the good news is that specifically with Microsoft technologies, things in the cloud like Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and all that stuff. I mean, it is a little different, but it's not that much different at its core from on-premises technologies. It is still based on the same products. So yeah, you don't need to worry about, the SQL Server itself, the SCSI and SATA drives, and, how to rate them for the best performance. I mean, you don't need to worry about any of that, but you still need to understand how SQL Server works, right? How to create databases, how to optimize indexes and stuff like that. So a lot of this transfers over. Some of it is new, and I mean, new is always good. You learn new stuff. But I guess the good thing is that a lot of it is still the same. Exchange Online, we have a lot of people with, plenty of Exchange background who transition to using Office 365 and Exchange Online in a very, very easy fashion, because, the underlying technology is pretty much the same. The way you configure it, the way you do mail routing and all that other stuff, it's at its core, it's the same. And another thing I wanted to mention, I think this may be like a good time to move on to the next subject, because as we kept talking about it, right? I think it's like, Frank said, well, this is the sign of sort of true consultant, right? Yes, we can come in, we can do things for you, Mr. Customer, and we can walk away and you would know what to do with it. But that would not be good for you, right? And that's not what we do. And gathering from what Frank was talking about, that's not what he does either. We bring the customer along. We move at the pace that is more or less comfortable for the customer, with a little extra push, because we cannot wait for months or years for them to get comfortable. So we give them that push, we bring them along, they learn all throughout the process, and when the technology is implemented and we either leave or we go into the maintenance mode, they pretty much know how to operate it. So I think this may be a good point to transition from talking about technology to talking about people. What do you think, Sadish?
Yeah, absolutely. I think agree with you. And
Or we
from
can
there-
spend days on this subject.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, and that's true. And you know what? You're right. The SharePoint aspect of it, along with the project server aspect of it, because I've managed them both. No, it's not that drastically different. Responsibilities of it are because we're not responsible for patching. We're not responsible for cumulative updates. We still have to do at our level now, instead of being a tier 3 support, we're now tier 1 and tier 2 support at a certain level. I mean, because there's still a lot of things that we can troubleshoot ourselves before we have to reach out to Microsoft.
Yep.
So
So-
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just like everything else. We have to constantly learn and relearn. I mean, the biggest I'll say benefit that I'll see to it is I'm now responsible for learning Microsoft Teams, Power Apps, Power Automate, all the other little applications, all the other applications that are associated with Office 365. So it allows me to expand my horizons.
Yeah, I think what Andrew says about the people, I mean, the people are the most important assets. I mean, if you think about it, you know, we all, you know, we have this fear about, you know, technology and change. But, you know, the people are valuable in that they, you know, the people like Mike understands, you know, the business processes. He understands the inefficiencies. He understands what keeps people up at night, decision makers up at night. And if you think about it, it's, you know, it's improving, it's cost efficiencies, it's cost savings, that really count. And these are not technical things. These are, you know, strategic things. And when I say, you know, move up the food chain, you know, I could totally see Mike move up the food chain and look at cost savings and look at, you know, efficiencies. I mean, if you think, let's just take security, information security for an example. Things haven't changed, even with the cloud. You still have endpoint security, you still have identity management, you still have access management, you know, you still have identity management architecture. So, you know, a lot of this, you know, in terms of moving up the food chain is very strategy related and very business related. And, you know, people who know the business the best, those are going to be the most valuable people, like Mike.
Yep, absolutely. I'm really sorry, CL, I gotta cut you off to move on with this presentation. All right, but it was a very interesting discussion. Thanks everyone for sharing it.
Boy, that was a big detour, Satish.
Yep. No, some of the very, I mean, everyone raised a very interesting point, and I see that the nature of the cloud platform is they're evolving so much, right? Just to be aware of it, what is there, it requires like significant amount of time and efforts. Like forget about how to doing it, right? Just knowing it, what's available out there. So I see that, you know, it's a big challenge for many of us. Okay. So now let's review the domain of the digital transformations or data. Now, as I said earlier, that, you know, some of the organizations are able to transform themselves such a big way by leveraging the power of the data. So if in your organization, I can give you a specific example that in terms of Microsoft 365, which Mike, you might be interested in, that Microsoft has a service called Microsoft Graph, right? Which kind of underlying API, REST APIs, which goes across all the M365 services. So it doesn't matter if you are on a Dwell, Yammer, OneDrive, Microsoft Teams, or SharePoint, Flow, but you can access the many components across the services using this M365 graph. So that's a power of our data, right? That now you have a data scattered all over the different application, but still using this graph API, you can bring all the information together and then, you know, kind of come up with, try to make the sense of it, right? And also you can create your own custom application, which kind of based on your organization needs. And so that's why it's become very important to kind of having the data and harnessing the power of it, so that you make a lot more sense to you and help you to guide you to the kind of in the right direction. Now, some of the innovative companies I have listed here is that because of these cloud and machine learning changes, we have seen that some of companies in the various domain are able to come up with a completely different new business model, right? And these companies organization wouldn't have existed without all this underlying technology and the core components of the digital transformation, right? For instance, PayPal, Uber, Coursera, Airbnb. Now, Airbnb there was a news about when they go to the public, right? It will be the biggest IPO probably ever in the history of stock market. That there was some news about it, and then see that just without owning any kind of physical asset, they are able to surpass the valuation of the big player like Marriott and then a big hotel chains. So that's a power of all these tools and technology, right? And just a matter of figuring out the right business model which kind of works best for you. So another core component is a value, right? Because now every customer expect the personalization, right? When they interact with your product or the service, they want your product and services to be tailored specifically, which kind of best suit their customer need. So that's become very important that the same thing folks on organization they expected. I have seen in M365 when you first log in, it automatically pulled all the information from various services wherever you have touched, right? Wherever you open the document or the conversation, it kind of pulls everything together in just one central dashboard. Also, it has now the customer has a huge power of the network effect, right? With the LinkedIn, Meetup.com, Facebook. So they are not only able to kind of take the decision, right? But also they have a big able to kind of influence other in sort of to change or kind of motivate the decisions as well. So there is also a very important thing to keep in mind. Trust, of course, with all these organizations having all the personal information. Trust is very important. That whenever we share any kind of personal information with our organization, how trust and secure that informations are. So these are the interesting aspect to look into it in terms of when we position our product or service, like what is the value proposition, right? How we are filling the specific need of the organization. Some of the additional companies I've listed down, right? When I've seen this amazing growth with TikTok, Uber, and Alibaba, Microsoft, Tesla, the way they are innovating it, I'm not going to get into the specific kind of product features, but if you take this example of TikTok, right, you see the kind of growth they have seen. It's only because of the power of the algorithms and the machine learning, right, which they are able to take the advantage of it. So it's a very fascinating to see how the new companies are coming up and taking the advantage of the new tools and technology available out there. I'm going to switch again a little bit and move on to the Microsoft 365. So this excellent chart, I got it from Microsoft, which provides a high-level overview about all the services and what are the key feature each services they offer, right? So from M365 so from Teams to Outlook, Exchange, then the kind of YAML, how all these services are interconnected, right? What information you get from the various tools. So altogether, I have seen that there are around 26 services, right? When you purchase a license for M365, you get 26 services. Now it's up to the organization how they leverage all these services, right? How they take the maximum benefit out of their investment. Some of the key services I have identified Microsoft Teams. I'm pretty much sure you guys might have used it. It's not about the services, right? I've seen the organization, like exponentially growing and implementing so many business processes automating it that it's kind of remarkable, right? Because this application serves as a platform, right? Foundation on which organization can build their multiple business processes with the bots and third party application, the whole ecosystem and the marketplace of the application integration. Same with the power platforms as well. Tremendous opportunity and potential with the Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate. Many I have myself I have done many kind of process automation, taking advantage of all the entire Power Platform. I've already give you a high level overview of Microsoft Graph. SharePoint is kind of it's already about it's kind of old, uh, available for being exist for a long time. So I'm not going to go into much detail. But OneDrive, another is a great product. I have done many migrations for organization, migrating the entire kind of thousands of terabytes data from network to migrating to the OneDrive online. And so this is how the organization can recognize that as we have already invested on M365. Now let's kind of going into each and every services and start taking the advantage of it. Azure AD is a great application for single identity, MFA, and also kind of kind of integrating the single identity for across the applications, right? Compliance and e-discovery, it's another gray area, especially for the pharmaceutical or legal industries, which is very highly regulated industries, to take the advantage of it. It also has a great benefits and the features. Kind of, I've seen a couple of use cases where can easily predict the likelihood of the finding some of the content, right? That what is the probability that we're gonna get some social security or some data being compromised out of the sales skill set. So what it does is instead of rather than going through all the data, it uses the power of Azure, right, and machine learning to kind of predict that what we are trying to find, which data would be make more sense, right? So instead of going through thousands and thousands of terabytes of data, it can help us to narrow down the scope of the data so then we can easily search and find the information. So Microsoft has put together this fast track resources. I would highly encourage you to visit this website, and you can get tons of resources from this website, from kind of getting the adoption, planning, preparation, and then also how organically we can assist organization to migrate some of the workload, right? So there's a lot of resources. I just put a link here for your reference. So that's it pretty much my side. Now, if you guys have any question about M365, please feel free to ask me. Anything which I might be able to answer. So, keep silence.
I guess you left us all speechless. Yeah, you covered it pretty well. I mean, I don't really have any specific questions on M365. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Yeah. So even later on, if you guys have any question, right? I know you guys also come from a Microsoft background, but I'm always kind of reachable. Please connect me to LinkedIn, and here's my email address, Satish.Baroda. If you guys need any help, kind of anything pretty much Teams, I have expertise on pretty much most of the products, right? Microsoft Intune is another big piece of it. Licensing, administration, governance, did a lot of bunch of project for many organizations. So at any point of time, if you need any help, please feel free to reach out to me.
I just want to add that Satish is available to consult with your teams if you need to get in touch with him. His LinkedIn is on the group chat. And Satish, thank you very much. You did a great job. You got a big heart. You're a great communicator, and I hope that we can have you here again. I wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and I wish you safe and health as we move on this year. Thank you, Satish.
Yeah, Satish, I thank you also. This was nice. It was. And I wanna say this. I wanna wish you all the same. Happy and safe Thanksgiving. No large gatherings. But you guys enjoy yourselves and be safe, okay? Thanks again.
Yeah, Michael, this seems like, it almost seems like you guys are my family, Thanksgiving family. We see each other quite frequently. And, you know, in a season of giving thanks, I want to thank you, Michael, Andrew, Frank, Jose, DK. I appreciate you guys coming, and, you know, I wish you take care of yourself during the holidays.
Well, no, thank you, man. No problem. I enjoy these sessions. I do.
Thanks.
Happy holidays.
Thank you,
All right,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you, CL. I really appreciate, you know, taking your time and scheduling, helping me with all the logistics and arranging meetup. I look forward for a lot more meetups and learn from you guys as well.
Thank you. And
All
Frank,
right, thanks again.
appreciate you.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right,
You always
bye-bye.
give us good
Thanks,
subject
everyone.
matter expert. Thanks.
Bye, rest of your day and be safe. Have a good one.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.